Deep in the wilds of Fiordland National Park's Wapiti blocks, our strategically placed trail cameras have just uncovered an absolute giant of a wapiti bull, the sort of specimen that would have any keen hunter drooling from the mouth in sheer admiration. We have to do a double take when reviewing our footage, as there appears to be not just one, but two extremely impressive beasts living in the area. The first a long antlered 15 pointer, and the latter a strong square-shaped 14 pointer. I'm not into the Disney tactic of humanising wild animals to play on people's emotions, but to avoid confusion, we nickname these bulls Ben the Big 15 and Bill the Strong 14. So here we are, well over 100 years after first being kicked off the boat, out into this inhospitable environment, and having faced so many challenges and adversity over the years to follow, beyond the odds the Fiordland Wapiti herd has survived and is now thriving in a healthy native environment, to the point where bulls of this calibre once again exist in this place. This is the story of the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation. So just how did the Fiordland Wapiti herd get to this point? Our story starts in the early 1900s with the American president of the day, Theodore Roosevelt, a keen hunter and conservationist at heart who kindly gifted 10 North American elk to the New Zealand government. A balance of 10 animals were purchased to make up a total of 20 Yellowstone National Park elk, destined to make the lengthy and arduous trip across seas to reach New Zealand shores. A massive test for the deer in itself, which only saw 18 animals survive the journey. The name Wapiti, which we've adopted here in New Zealand, is Native American in origin, meaning white, and refers to the pale rump and tail of the American elk. Considered second only in size to the moose, arriving here in New Zealand, they were a sight to behold. Following an earlier unsuccessful liberation in the 1870s on Kawo Island in the Hauraki Gulf, for unknown reasons, the acclimatisation societies decided the mountains of Fiordland would be the place of release for the remaining 18 animals, and they were successfully liberated at the head of George Sound in 1905. Despite one of the animals dying soon after release, the remainder and their offspring soon began establishing themselves in all directions from their liberation point. It's presumed that without the presence of any predators nor competition from other browsers, the wapiti flourished from the abundance of available feed and began to grow antlers even bigger than that seen in their North American homeland. They were left largely to their own devices in these early years and were under full protection up until 1923, when the first hunting licenses were issued by the Southland Acclimatisation Society. This saw the first legal wapiti bull being shot under licence by Masterton sportsman Viv Donald at the head of Lake Catherine in April 1923. The bull carried 14 points and measured 54 3/4 inches in length, with a mighty Douglas score of 411 1/4.
So the early wapiti hunters, they were a really dedicated bunch of guys. So they travelled by road and then get here. And there was no such thing as float planes or helicopters. There was only boat access. So they were away for up to a month by the time they left home and got back again.
The herd continued to produce many great trophies over the years to follow, but was facing two ticking time bombs: an ever-growing population placing pressure on the native environment, and a steady infiltration of red deer coming from the north and south that were interbreeding with the once pure-blooded elk, declining both their body and antler size. To add to the issues, following the Christchurch Deer Menace Conference in 1930, the Department of Internal Affairs declared all deer in New Zealand a pest in 1934, removing any sort of protection the wapiti had. This saw the herd caught up in a lengthy struggle for survival amongst various conflicting interests over the next 60-odd years. From ground-based government deer culling operations shooting to waste through the 30s and 40s, trying to put a dent in the growing Fiordland deer population, more culling operations carried out by the NZDA organised hunters, skin and meat hunting through the 50s and 60s, further complicated by the fact that Fiordland was designated a national park in 1952, which gave no place to valued introduced species, an era which saw the legendary Jack Mackenzie, aka Mr. Wapiti, at the centre of the fight for the herd.
Jack Mackenzie tried really, really hard to get helicopter culling in Fiordland probably 10, 12 years before it actually happened. And it was probably one of his Biggest regrets that he never was able to get that system up and running. And if it had got going, perhaps the great Wapiti poaching era by the small helicopters during the $1 a pound era may never have happened, because the numbers probably would have been reduced and possibly a purer strain of Wapiti may have been kept.
And then when the wild venison market hit $1 a pound in the 1970s, it saw the Wapiti become a casualty of the infamous deer wars, whereby 20 to 30 helicopter crews were making highly profitable raids into the park illegally, when only a single helicopter company had been granted the license to recover deer from the area. Throughout this time, only the infiltrating red deer or poorer quality animals were meant to be taken, but when a Wapiti carcass weighs considerably more than a red, and the operators were being paid per kilo, well, let's just say for a lot of them, the money had the final say about what was shot.
At that time, you could buy a Hughes 300 for about $40,000, and you could basically pay for one in a few months' work poaching Wapiti, because they're bigger animals. So, yeah, it was just part of the era.
This later turned to live capture to service the growing deer farming industry, and the poor old Wapiti were being pillaged left, right and centre.
We ended up right in the middle of the 80s, and live capture, as everyone knows, the prices went through the roof. We had a criteria of what we have now of reds and hybrids for the betterment of the herd, but of course I think the mentality back there was, because it was changing around month by month with different operators, if we didn't take that animal, it might have been borderline, the next operator will. So unfortunately the Wapiti suffered in a vast manner. It was supply and demanding to the farming community then, and the Wapiti were a bigger animal and produced more meat and more velvet onto the farming scene. Just sheer commercial exploitation of it.
As if things couldn't get any more dire for the herd, the 1980s saw a highly contested Tākehei reintroduction program designated for the middle of Wapiti country in the Edith Saddle. The bureaucrats of the day announced they wanted the Wapiti removed, and then set about live capturing hundreds of the best Wapiti type animals from Fiordland, on the promise they would be re-released to a better suited location elsewhere. The captured crown herd was kept on land court farms, and the best animals mysteriously ended up on private deer farms all over the country, despite the fact they were public property. This sad saga came to a close when the released Tākehei were never seen again, and the whole reintroduction program was scrapped. Despite all the setbacks and challenges, the Wapiti still maintained their place as one of the pinnacle New Zealand game animal drawcards in the country, and recreational hunters continued to enter the area each year via hunter-run ballots. In 1995, the government of the day allowed unlimited helicopter hunting throughout the park, and the Wapiti entered a dark era. By the year 2000, the herd was in its poorest shape ever, with a lot of the remaining Wapiti types getting shot by helicopters, again when only the infiltrating red deer and crossbreds were supposed to be taken. The saviour of the Wapiti came about by sheer chance, when in 2001, the venison price crashed due to a 1080 poison residue scare in deer carcasses, and as a result, the wild venison industry collapsed overnight, taking with it any form of viable deer control for the area. This coincided with a review of the Fiordland National Park plan, and it created an opportunity for the Department of Conservation and Fiordland Wapiti Foundation that was established in 1993 to jointly manage the area for better conservation and hunting outcomes, the first such agreement ever signed in New Zealand. This saw the beginning of the modern day Fiordland Wapiti Foundation era and the change of guard from founding member Ron Peacock to determined local hunter Roy Sloan to steer the ship from here on out. They say the making of every good movie is based around three things: something pretty worth fighting for, an evil villain that wants to steal it away, and a courageous hero who's prepared to run through fire to save it. I guess in this story you could say our pretty and lovable character worth fighting for is the Wapiti herd. Our villains are numerous, from the infiltrating red deer, the slow to react hunting community fighting the inevitable, overzealous government officials, greedy and rule-bending commercial operators, to now those relentless predators like stoats and rats. While our humble and reluctant grassroots Southland hero was at the time Foundation President Roy Sloan, who had a bit of fire in his belly about the state of the Wapiti herd. Through our mutual interest in the Fiordland Wapiti, I've known Roy for almost 20 years now, and most weeks would see us chatting about something or collaborating on a project to promote the work the Foundation's doing. From a young age, the old hunting books and gripping tales by the likes of John Anderson drew me like a magnet to the place. And ever since my first trip into Wapiti country as an 18-year-old, the whole challenge of the Fiordland mountains and weather, home to this big emotion-stirring animal that defied all the odds, has me well and truly hooked for life. Hear your first spine-tingling bugle up on the Fiordland tops after days of rain has cleared off, and I guarantee you'll understand the attraction. Nearly 3 years ago, I naively asked Roy what else I could help the Foundation with, and his response surprised me. He said that Wapiti hunting adventures have been shown time and time again on television, but he'd always thought that a documentary piece capturing all the behind-the-scenes work of the Foundation could be quite interesting in showing what successful modern-day deer management looked like. Fast forward to October 2020, and I boarded a plane south to Invercargill to join Roy, the current Fiordland Wapiti Foundation president and full-time volunteer at the time, to kickstart our documentary plans. We both agreed that the Wapiti themselves were to be our key character, so we hatched a plan to install a number of trail cameras in Fiordland to capture the present state of the herd, numbers, quality, and what living in this harsh environment year-round looks like for the animals on the ground. Would reset one of their predator trapping lines each time to justify the helicopter flight, and would set about trying to capture the challenges and work the Foundation members undertake on a day-to-day basis. What we found on our first check of the trail cameras in January 2021 caught us all by surprise.
Certainly got more than 10 or more than 12 points per look 'em, it's hard to tell.
2 magnificent looking bulls, heart-melting family interactions, and a potential Kiwi encounter. The resident care were even polite enough to come say hello to the man responsible for the hard work going into their protection.
So that camouflage works, right?
It was all shaping up to be an interesting journey ahead. So just what exactly is the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation? In technical terms, they're an incorporated society with charitable trust status, who have a volunteer committee to carry out their administration and work. But if you spend any time with the team, you'll quickly figure out that they're a passionate group of guys and girls who take their role of being caretakers of the 175,000 hectare Wapiti area pretty seriously. And they've gone on to set the benchmark, a gold standard for hunter-led deer management in New Zealand.
People actually think we're paid employees. We're not. We're volunteers, and we have a group of real cool volunteers who are giving all this from their heart. It's passion, and it's passion that drives these things, and it's quite heartwarming to be involved with these guys.
Their mechanism to carry out this management is through a community agreement formed with the Department of Conservation that's re-signed every 10 years. To carry out any form of deer management isn't cheap, and coupled with a long-time lack of appetite from governments to give hunters control over their own destiny, the substantial control cost is one of the reasons why deer management doesn't exist much in New Zealand. Budget constraints often see it being placed as a lower priority, sliding into the too hard basket, solely left to the devices of the volatile wild venison market. So what's the Foundation's winning formula? First and foremost, they are self-funded by hunters entering the annual Wapiti ballot. Their entire program takes place at no cost to the New Zealand taxpayer.
It's just grown from strength to strength, really. Going back in the time I've been involved, from 70 or 80 parties putting in for a block to now we're well over 500. So the only downside is, I suppose, it's harder for us to get a block.
Fiordland Wapiti hunting during the rut is one of the most sought-after hunting opportunities on the New Zealand hunting calendar, and the long-running Wapiti ballot still remains the main source of income for the Foundation. But importantly, the attraction and success of the ballot relies solely on the Foundation's deer management delivering a quality Wapiti resource that attracts people to reapply each year to hunt during the bugle. Today, the Wapiti area is divided up into 25 blocks and 4 separate 10-day hunting periods over the bugle from the middle of March through until late April. A couple of thousand hunters now apply on the Foundation's website over October and November each year, and a random generated computer program selects the winning 600 applicants. Local Te Anau builder and ballot coordinator Roger Foote has been running the ballot side of things for a number of years now, and it can be a bit of a thankless task at times, but he still really enjoys the role.
Yep, just ask my wife really, and once the ballots come out, every night we sort of get home, you sit down to have dinner and the phone starts ringing. There's people asking questions about their block and different bits and pieces. But yeah, putting in the extra work and making sure that sort of recreational stuff and well-being spot is there for future generations means so much really, and that's probably why I do it.
The hype for wapiti hunters gradually builds over the summer months as they check over their gear and gather as much recent information as they can about their block, all while dreaming of the big bull that they might happen to encounter on their trip. All the planning comes to a climax in Te Anau at the Wapiti briefings held by the Foundation for all parties the evening before each ballot period begins. You can feel the hunters' excitement in the air, mixed with a fair bit of anxiety of what the Fiordland mountains and weather gods are going to throw at them over the coming 10 days, as they receive their safety briefings, key messages from the Foundation, and sign their DOC hunting permits.
To say that they're pumped up and excited is probably understating it.
From here on in, it's all up to the hunters as they enjoy their last night of comfort before beginning the voyage into their blocks the following morning, either by boat across lake or sea, the more gentle way to acclimatise to the towering Fiordland mountains, or by taking the quick ride in via helicopter. Although hunters' chances of securing a great wapiti trophy have never been better following the ongoing deer management of the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation, it's the full Fiordland hunting experience that keeps hunters coming back for more.
The animals are only part of the package. Fiordland's the other half of the package. If you talk to people who come to Fiordland, it's really interesting that it's a wapiti that dragged them here. But time and time again, these stories are about the hardships, getting a fright on a bluff, and it's about Fiordland herself. And then they talk about the deer.
Now with a low population, high quality herd breeding some great animals, a lot of power sits in the hands of the hunters themselves. Countless quality young bulls are being produced, but getting hunters to show their restraint to let them breed and reach their full trophy potential of 8 years of age and older has become the challenge the Foundation now faces.
Hunters are now starting to use cameras, starting to leave bulls, and they're proud of it. But still, we have them one or two who can come in here, and I know examples of this past couple of years where parties have shot half a dozen bulls, and each one of them are just young juveniles.
A spin-off of having hundreds of hunters in the Fiordland Mountains each bugle is they're now partaking in one of the largest citizen science projects in the country. The Foundation's app, which requires hunters to log animal sightings and their harvest returns, also has them recording all native bird sightings and predator encounters, aiding the Foundation and other groups in their conservation work.
I'm not ashamed to say that their number one objectives for the Wapiti Foundation is actually to protect Fiordland environment.
Primarily, we function as a conservation organisation. To do that, we have an agreement that we must keep animal numbers relatively low.
Jack McKenzie once said to me that he looked at every deer in Fiordland and felt like they were his kids, and funnily enough, I'm starting to feel like that myself. The job I hate the most in life is doing deer recovery or deer culling.
Yep, it's the ugly side of conservation that no one really likes to talk about. But at the end of the day, this deer management work is what the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation live and die by. I've heard Roy repeatedly say this is the most crucial aspect to the work they do and their number one role, keeping the deer population at a sustainable level. This sees the Foundation working very closely with the local Te Anau Department of Conservation team to set annual control targets each season based on what their vegetation monitoring is indicating, and it's imperative the Foundation meet these targets to honour their community agreement. Luckily, this ongoing deer control is a win-win scenario for both conservation and the Wapiti herd.
I think it's a really positive relationship. The Wapiti Foundation does a heck of a lot of good work within the Wapiti area. Back in 2017, we saw a slight uptick in alpine deer browse, and immediately we had a conversation with the Wapiti Foundation and increased those control targets that are set on an annual basis, and they have been maintained through until now. So the program is very responsive around those monitoring results. By far and away, the highest investment and most sustained investment in deer control within the park has been from the Wapiti Foundation over the last 10 years.
The key recipe to grow big Wapiti bulls is to have quality genetics, age, and an abundance of available feed. The genetics of the herd are the toughest one to manage, but are only improving through selective control work. The age of the animals is now in the control of the hunters, showing restraint when entering the blocks, whereas the feed abundance is solely dictated by the population of animals in the area, and this is entirely manageable by the Foundation's venison recovery operations. In plain terms, a low density of high quality animals benefits everyone, no matter where your interests lie. Renowned wildlife biologist and trapping expert Cam Speedy has been a long-time supporter of the Wapiti program and has played a key role in helping shape their management.
If the Foundation wasn't running the program that's in here, I guess what would be left would be WARO, the Wild Animal Recovery Operation industry, which is driven by commercial reality. So often the commodity prices don't pay for the service to remove deer. We'll see boom bust. We'll see velvet becoming such an important part of the barely commercially viable industry that we'll see all those big bulls smashed over in November every year to help pay the fuel bill. So we won't have a trophy wapiti herd, we won't have hunters checking traps. I actually see that as a lose-lose outcome for Fiordland and for New Zealand. I actually see the Wapiti Foundation working in tandem with conservation interests as the win-win. Wapiti take 8 years to develop and mature, so we need lots of mature males. What we don't need is a V8 cow herd eating all the fuel in here, because the fuel is native biodiversity. So we just need a 1.3 litre fuel efficient cow herd that will provide the feeding to bring out the genetics of a whole lot of bulls competing for mating rights, and over time that competition will allow the strongest, fittest sires to breed and dominate the gene flow to next generations. If we can keep the numbers in check and carefully manage them, we can have our cake and eat it too. It's not like there was never browsing here. There's always been browsing in Fiordland. If it's a well-managed wapiti herd or it's a whole lot of large birds, ecology is still functioning. Deer will never go. What we can do is maximise the benefits of having that resource in this country, but we need to understand they have a consequence and minimise their consequences. So yeah, it's about balance.
This deer management has seen the Foundation remove 1,000 deer each season from the Wapiti area for almost 20 years now, comprising unwanted red deer and poorer quality wapiti. This has been the most consistent deer control work carried out in Fiordland in recent times, amassing near on 20,000 total animals shot in the park, right throughout the years of low venison prices when other recovery operations were non-existent. The success of it has relied on the Foundation having exclusive control over commercial operations in the area, whereby they've been able to contract 2 local operators to carry out consistent and selective deer management without having to compete with numerous other operators in a race to the bottom.
The quality is better here now. There's more control from the Foundation on the operators working in here because there's a good relationship. In the mid-80s where there was less control, less compliance, less people abiding by the rules.
But this deer management is no easy task for a number of reasons. The first being, what is actually considered to be a wapiti in the current age? And what sort of animal should the Foundation be striving to achieve? A creamy coloured animal that looks most like an elk? Or the one with the biggest set of antlers? Or is it a bit of both?
Just because it's a big creamy white cow or a big creamy white bull doesn't mean it's going to grow a 50-inch head, you know? Some of these animals are in there that are more a Fiordland type deer now than a pure wapiti, and I think we've got to understand that a bit more. And instead of just culling on colour of coat, we've got to probably more look at, going a bit the other way too.
Making these selection calls at speed out of a moving helicopter is understandably no easy feat, and the Foundation and their experienced operators have developed the following criteria to adhere to. If it's a red, it gets shot. If it's under the age of 4.5 years, it lives. If it's over the age of 4.5 years and is not showing trophy potential, it gets shot. If it's over the age of 4.5 years and has trophy potential, it lives. Once in conflict, hunters and helicopters working together and selectively targeting females to reduce the breeding base, along with undesirable males, is the future of managing New Zealand's big game animal herds. The other major challenge with deer management that we've touched on is it is not cheap. The Foundation's control work costs hundreds of thousands of dollars in helicopter flight time each year alone, and when you add the highly volatile wild venison market to the mix, consistent year in year out control work is a big ask. However, in the same breath, you have this fantastic product in the form of wild, organic and lean venison protein with a great conservation story to boot, being sold as a commodity product at the whim of the volatile venison schedule. There had to be a better way. Fast forward to February 2022, and I was heading back to Te Anau to recheck the trail cameras with Roy, but we had some important guests along for the ride too. The foundation had recently formed a connection with a like-minded group of Auckland restaurateurs and top chefs who had created a group called With Wild, and they were interested in securing the Fiordland Wapiti venison to supply among their networks.
I had a mate who sells wild foods and approached him and said, look, we've got all this venison, we need to do something with it. The With Wild thing came about, and with their chefs and their restaurants, and they didn't want to see the food wasted either. It's pure organic meat and it should be utilised.
I'm one of the co-founders of a new organisation called With Wild, and we're all about working together, taking beautiful product, and in this case it's the Wapiti, and looking to rescue and upcycle that into sort of accessible products, from sausages and burgers, patties to nice lean cuts. And we'll be looking to launch it through sort of high-end supermarkets to start with. You'll be able to buy it from our website, so you can buy it direct, and then we'll just slowly grow it and make it available through some of the restaurants as well. That can then actually give back to the park, so a financial element to enable the foundation to A, continue their work, and then actually increase the amount of work that they're doing. So we call it From the Wild, for the Wild. So it's a circular loop to continue to look after this beautiful place. We're not hiding the fact that this is a hunter-driven program. In fact, we're actually really proud of it, that it's hunters that start with conservation first, and that's unique and exciting. We had the pleasure of just tasting some fresh wapiti last couple of weeks for the first time ever. You know, it's game, it's wild, would it be intense? But it's actually just beautiful, lean, flavoursome, but just really lean and delicious meat. But knowing where it comes from and actually knowing that this is doing some good as well. So we're really excited about enabling New Zealanders to actually try this quite wonderful product that's coming out of quite a wonderful place.
We've been trying to get a market, a venison market, where we could sell our venison in, you know, likes of Auckland and Wellington and other cities in New Zealand. Not only sell it, we want a story behind it. We want to talk about where it come from, and when we talk about our conservation programs that we do in here, and we want to tell urban New Zealand about that. We talk about Aucklanders and we talk about Southlanders, and you know, we kind of all have a joke about it. When we sit down and start chatting it, you know, we're pretty close together as humans, and we want to try and bridge that gap.
The relationship has now gone on to the point where With Wild are wanting to secure all of the venison the foundation recovers during control work. The major upside of this arrangement, beyond raising great awareness of the Fiordland Wapiti story in urban New Zealand, is it lessens the foundation's vulnerability to the ongoing venison price fluctuations. A recent highlight was the Wild Heart Burger being served up at burger fuel restaurants nationwide, utilising the foundation's Wapiti venison as the burger patty. A great initiative that took the fast food world by storm, with the 30,000 available burgers selling out completely. And a nice bonus was $1 from every burger was donated from burger fuel back to the foundation to help fund additional traps in their predator trapping network. Slowly and steadily, the foundation is finding ways to make their deer control work in the Wapiti area more and more sustainable.
It's pretty cool actually, because urban New Zealand's getting bigger and rural New Zealand's getting smaller, so it's really important. So our relationship with Wild is a pretty cool part of the Wapiti Foundation now.
A big part of the foundation's success and their community-wide support can be attributed to the substantial conservation work they carry out. This is all above and beyond their management of deer densities and the subsequent vegetation health in the Wapiti area. The foundation's predator trapping program began in 2005 when founding member Ron Peacock secured funding to install 175 traps in the Worsley and Castle valleys to predominantly help the endangered native whio population. This program, currently run by committee member Chris Cameron, has now grown to a large network of over 500 traps up 5 different river catchments in the Glacenok Wilderness area, which the Foundation's volunteer team service and reset 8 times a year.
Cool thing about the Wapiti Foundation, we have a really dedicated team of guys. You never hear anything from them, they don't ask for any accolades, they're just a hard-working bunch of buggers. We're always adding to them, or we get traps washed away by floods and all sorts of stuff happens, you know. And the whole traps are all in the wilderness area, so all got to be done on foot. If a trap gets washed away or traps get added, she's on the back, on your pack and carried up.
The main targets of these trapping networks are rats and particularly stoats, the highly efficient and indiscriminate killers of our ground nesting birds. The program has proved a major success for the Foundation, beyond just improving the population health of the various native bird species found in Wapiti country. Elizabeth Scott is a doctor in Te Anau who, prior to meeting the Wapiti Foundation, didn't hold the greatest regard for the hunting community. But that quickly changed when she became involved in the Foundation's trapping program.
Well, as far as hunters go, I'm afraid me and some of my tramping friends probably had quite a negative view of hunters. Used to think they were all yobbos, thought they didn't care about the outdoors apart from the hunting. But having got involved with the Wapiti Foundation, I've realised that a lot of guys are really passionate, not just about hunting, but about preserving the environment and the birds. The vast majority, actually really care a lot about the outdoors. I have a particular affection for Fio, the blue duck, and that's what this is designed principally to protect, as well as the other birds in the area. It certainly reduced the number of stoats. Doc do a Fio survey here. The dock ranger who does that, he commented that in the Worsley Castle catchment they've counted 15 pairs. That's the most they've ever counted. So it seems like the stoat trapping is helping, certainly.
There's so many treasures that are hanging on here, some of them by a toenail, that are stoat vulnerable. Kiwi, weka, kaka, kia, mohua, falcon. We've heard all of those this trip. Stoats are a major predatory threat to them, and if we can just take the top off the stoat population, that's in everybody's interest. The difference that those treasures hang on here. It's been a very long time since I've been able to hear two pairs of kiwis duetting to each other across a valley. And it's hunter energy that's protecting those things, you know. So without the Wapiti, that hunter energy wouldn't be here. The future of Wapiti and Fiordland will only be secured if we can demonstrate there's a conservation gain. And the trap lines, the monitoring of the vegetation on the tops, all that sort of stuff will demonstrate that there is a sustainable, viable place for Wapiti here. And if we can demonstrate that and keep the herd trajectory going the way it's going at the moment, we'll see Wapiti bulls that people haven't seen for decades being shot most bugles. But it does rely on a Wapiti community to buy into that responsibility to look after the place, and that responsibility to let those younger bulls walk. Take a photo, let them go. And if someone shoots a 50 by 50, let's all celebrate in their success, because us as a community have contributed to that.
So we've just got the end of our trap line and we've run across two juvenile Fio. There was a pair at camp last night with two, and we thought, oh, that's a pretty small hutch. But I'm suspicious that maybe these are part of that family group, so they might have fledged four. We can tell that they're juvies because they've got very grey bills still, and their nice chestnut breast feathers haven't coloured up yet. They're a little bit more camoed as juvies, but awesome to see a pair fledging four. And I'm sure that this trap mine has some part contributed to it. Awesome.
We have these projects that we call citizen science, where hunters are really involved. Over the ballot, we have about 500 people logging data on care sightings and Fio sightings and Fiordland rock wren and all other types of birds. And the Foundation are probably leading that space, and that space has been taken up by other hunting groups in New Zealand now. We've paired up with the likes of the Care Conservation Trust. It's an unlikely marriage between them and the hunters, but they're actually pretty alike. We all want to do the same thing. We love the country, we love the birds, and we want to do what we can to help save those birds. Over the last probably 5 years, we've been working closely together. We're responsible for uncovering probably the biggest population of care in New Zealand, and it's here in the Wapiti area of Fiordland, and that's pretty cool. We've been doing some exciting stuff like capturing care and putting tracking transmitters on them and trying to find out when they nest and where they go and how much distance they travel. So the hunters are right behind that and logging that into the new Hunters app during each ballot period. And so yeah, it's a really cool relationship.
I guess you could say the third pillar to the Foundation's caretaker role of the Wapiti area, beyond deer management and conservation work, is the maintenance and upkeep of the 6 huts in the area. Jointly with the Backcountry Trust, the Foundation plays a crucial role in protecting these pieces of Fiordland heritage when otherwise, budget constraints might see them lost forever. With the Wapiti program gaining more and more momentum, it got us thinking about what the spin-off effects were on the Te Anau and wider Southland community. Obviously the 600 hunters and their wallets who travel south to enter the blocks through the Bugle each year are of great benefit to the local retail, hospitality and tourism operators like the boat and helicopter companies. But what does this equate to in an economic return to the community? And what was the general impression of the Foundation amongst the Te Anau locals?
I mean, the Foundation brings probably very close to $3 million into the town by way of the raw and also the conservation work that they do. 700 odd hunters coming in, spending probably a couple of K each, maybe a wee bit more. So yeah, the benefits to the community are immense.
We've provided all the timber for those stoke traps for the last 13, 14 years, and I think we've put together roughly about 600 of those. For us to be able to be involved in that as a business in the community's been, pretty lucky. Bringing all those people into town over March, April in particular, it helped put us on the map and a different group of people.
I think everything that they are doing is massive for our local community. Every shop downtown sees a rise in numbers coming through the doors, especially if we get a rainy day and they don't get in on the first day. They tend to stick around and spend a bit more money at the local cafes, bars and restaurants and accommodation providers like myself.
In recent years, the Foundation themselves have also began leveraging off their winning formula, both to try and increase their commercial funding sources, but also just for some fun while raising awareness of their program. Beyond the marketing of their venison with Wild, this has seen the Foundation now selling their own pale ale beer and other merchandise items. But I'm not sure if they've got their sales spin quite right yet.
If only we had a cold beer. It's a bloody hot day. Walked all the way down from the top of the Nits Valley. What do you reckon? Whoa, what's that? What is it? It's a Fiordland Wapiti lager. Unbelievable. You've got to try this. Cheers, boys. Well done. If nothing else, it's a bit of a laugh, and it gets our name out there, and it also puts a little bit of money back into our pocket to help us do what we're trying to achieve out here.
Despite the hunting sector's relentless passion, energy and belief towards promoting and implementing proper game management, our biggest downfall is that we're nearly all volunteers. Everyone has day jobs to complete and everything is squeezed into whatever personal time we can muster, which all comes at a sacrifice.
Like now, we should be at work, but we're down here doing this and organising the event for the weekend and coming up, and so yeah, there's a lot of voluntary hours going to it.
For over 20 years, Roy's mountain of work with the Foundation has been carried out as a volunteer.
Leaders like Roy only come around once in a generation, and we've seen a few of them in the history of the Wapiti, a handful of them. Jack Mackenzie, John Henderson, Roy Sloane's right up there. Without Roy, we wouldn't have a Wapiti herd. I mean, he's an inspiration, but he's such a humble man in his typical Southland way. He's a critical leadership for not only the Wapiti herd, but for hunting in New Zealand.
My strength was coming in and not being tainted by history, not knowing how hunters have fought with non-hunters before, and I think a little bit different. There's no two ways about that.
Without his ongoing energy, collaboration and ability to get the job done, the state of the Wapiti herd might look very different today. It's been relentless and all-consuming, and despite the satisfaction it's no doubt given him, it's certainly come at a personal sacrifice that all Wapiti hunters are forever indebted to him.
Back in the day, I wandered up the Glazeknock and I felt something that was bigger than myself. It was eerie, prehistoric, I don't know. I still feel it to this day, but it's been dragging me back now for probably 2/3 of my life. It's my warm place in the world. It's where I'm comfortable. What kept driving me back here year after year was to look for a bull. I'd seen a bull several years before, a young bull, and left him. And that year, I stalked in. I could have shot him at 200 metres, 100 metres, 50 metres. The reason I was getting closer was I couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger. In the end, I walked away from him, and I had a friend who was sitting on the mountain behind me, just shaking his head at me walking away from him. In the end, I actually talked myself into shooting him, and I shot him. Talking about it now, I feel sadness shooting that bull. I don't know why. I don't know why. I always look at that bull as the bull that changed the history of the Wapiti blocks, to be fair, or the Wapiti herd. I thought at that time that if I was going to be involved with the future management of the Wapiti herd or anything to do with the Wapiti herd, I had to distance myself. I couldn't be involved with people saying that Roy Sloane's here for his own selfishness. At that time, I drew a line in the sand for myself and said that if I'm not looked upon as respect, this will never work. So I haven't carried a rifle since 2004. And since 2004, I've still probably done more trips in here than most people. It just keeps dragging me back, so don't need a rifle anyway, they're heavy.
In winter 2021, we headed back in to check the trail cameras and reset the trap line. And it was nice to have Roy's daughter Emma along as a helper to share some insight into what the life of the modern day Wapiti man looks like from inside the family walls.
Dad always jokes about all my inheritance will go to the Wapiti Foundation the day he dies, so that sums it up pretty much. It's like the Wapiti Foundation is an older sibling that doesn't live at home anymore. There's a type of person that you see on TV who people think my dad is, and there is a type of person that he is at home. He's bubbly, I wouldn't say bubbly, but at home he's completely different than what he is on camera, which he probably won't like me saying that. One quote that Dad always says is, he's probably been saying for 15 years now, is this will be my last year in Fiordland. So I think that pretty much goes hand in hand with all the Wapiti in Fiordland. It's never going to be his last year. He will probably be doing this till the day he dies. It's about this place. It's a spiritual place for probably many, and especially my father.
By chance, I received an off-the-record phone call mid-2022 from Foundation committee member Adam Fairmaid, asking me what I thought about the hunting community's appetite for the Foundation taking the step of actually employing someone to run the show. A few months later, Roy was appointed the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation's new general manager, a groundbreaking step among the volunteer-driven New Zealand hunting foundations.
He became the Foundation's first employee. And as I've often said, he started working for us 15 years ago, but he became employed last year.
It had to happen. The Wapiti Foundation's become obviously a bit of a monster. It can't sustain itself just with the volunteer work that has been put in. We'd hate to lose him. We couldn't lose him. It would just fall over without him.
He's been the driving force behind the Wapiti Foundation and still is. And we sort of see the committee as a support crew to mesh around him and to help him. But everybody has something significant to contribute, not just in the committee either. It's quite a community effort.
Being a volunteer, it's really hard to dedicate the time to making it run. So having Roy taking up that position, especially with his wealth of knowledge of the whole program, probably couldn't have had a better person to do it.
So I've been an employee of the Wapiti Foundation since December. And the biggest change I've found is I'm doing less hunting than ever. Something's gone really wrong really quickly. I guess the big change for me is accountability. I'm a very competitive person, so I bring that to my job and I always hold myself accountable. And from a volunteer, I think, to a paid employee, it gives the foundation an edge to actually start pushing the boundaries and do things better.
From humble beginnings and a shared vision amongst a group of passionate hunters back in 1993, when the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation was first formed, it has gone on to be the greatest success story of public land deer management New Zealand has ever seen. Exactly 100 years since Viv Donald secured the first ever Wapiti under licence, the herd has gone beyond the odds and is in the best shape it has been in for decades. And what about the trail camera project and those jaw-dropping Wapiti bulls, Bill and Ben? Well, it's seen us amass years of incredible footage and insights that we just don't have time to share this time round. And as to the bulls, after one later capture, the cunning beasts seem to be mysteriously avoiding our cameras. one can only think they are still living amongst the dense expanse of Fiordland bush somewhere, with a few extra years of age on them, what mighty specimens they must be. This was the story of the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation.
Fiordland is a magnet. It is a magnet. It drags people back again and again, and the Wapiti area does have that special mana about it, and they just keep coming back.
The true trophy is being in here, and it's not about collecting antlers, it's about getting that one animal in your lifetime.
It's the pinnacle of hunting in New Zealand, really. It's the getting up those hills and getting down them and getting through them and seeing the wapiti out there roaming free in New Zealand is pretty special too.
The fact that they're here gets a whole load of other people on board with conservation, so that's got to be a plus, I think.
Absolutely. Wapiti are part of a modern New Zealand and they're part of a modern Fiordland National Park. The history, it's part of the cultural and social history and fabric of this place.
There's a lot of people out there that probably never thought we would succeed in getting to this point, I suppose.
We've got a Wapiti statue on the edge of town, and you look back over the last 110 years, it's been a big part of this town for a long time.
Is the ballot still rigged, or have they sorted that out?
I don't think it's been rigged for a while, has it?
I haven't got a block, have you?
No, I haven't actually, not lately, no.
I've been very impressed with the last 15 years or so that the foundation has been going.
All think, you know, your dad's gonna, you know, but it's not like that. It's about the appreciation of deer, wapiti, of every part that goes into it. It's a passion sport.
What's better, 10 days in Fiordland or going on the God Zone?
10 days in Fiordland. It's simple.
Certainly it's big, it's wet, and it hurts you at times, and so it's all about that package.